Today, when I was thinking about talking to you, and a lot of topics came to my mind, but I thought let me get started with the business resiliency and disaster recovery because that's what we discuss a lot. When I think about the organization with whom I work with on a daily basis, IT landscape has been pretty complex. And I hear you talk about one-click recovery. Is it really mean like you click a button and then it recovers from the system? Just elaborate more on that.
So one-click recovery is basically a combination of automation and orchestration. Most of the clients are, if there is an actual disaster, if your employees, your resources are not available to perform the disaster recovery, more and more customers are looking into automation and orchestration. It's one-click recovery is basically a combination of that. And though you cannot do 100% recovery automated way, you can customize your recovery in such a way that if you click a button, it will start executing your recovery scripts in a way that there may be some areas where you want to be cautious and have a pause and give input or take a look at it. But more and more recoveries can be automated, orchestrated. Especially there are scenarios where you don't recover but you switch it over from one data center to another. Those can be one click recoveries because that environment is known, it is always there, and
Right.
it is customized for a switch over type of scenario where your data center goes down, you just switch it over your DR to the other data center. So yes, one click is possible depending on how you want to customize your environment.
Got you. So, Anand, I have seen the client's IT landscape used to be like on-prem. I think it was, a framework was already built. We knew how to recover. Then comes cloud, right? And it has changed the way develop an IT application, we manage an IT application. How things have changed in the DR world post the cloud has emerged in a big way.
So, I mean, I have been in disaster recovery for the last 24 years. I started my journey in 1997, um, back, um, it has drastically changed. Customers, it was like a more of an infrastructure type of recovery, in the past, where the customers would, recover their infrastructure. Many times they will do application level testing, but their focus was, how can I get my infrastructure up and running? How can I meet my RTOs, or RPOs? And it was more focused on, but it has changed now. It has changed more to a focus on application or even business process based recovery. So customers have now need to know their environment. They need to understand what their dependencies, application dependencies are. They need to have tools to discover their environment so that they have the right environment available for their disaster recovery uh, environment. uh, and we are doing more granular type of recoveries, right? People are knowing that you know that they may have to do a application level recovery or business process level recovery. Those those processes are getting tuned through automation orchestration type of environment so that you can just recover a piece of uh, you know application or an entire application or a business process. And so it has evolved, right? I mean, I have seen recoveries during some of the actually disaster events such as Hurricane Floyd, Hurricane Sandy. Customer, I mean, more and more governance, on the disaster recovery programs. Customers understand that that you need to basically be practicing. How do you are going to recover?
Yeah.
You cannot be just coming. If you declare a disaster, and if you have not practiced it, you're going to have issues. And because I'm just going to divert a little bit, but because of the cyber incidents happening around, the DR has also has a more focus. Because in 10 years back, there was this concept. When the cloud started to come, people started to think, oh, I don't need DR, right? I'm this, but that's not true. There are incidents happen in cloud, and things like that. So you have to be prepared for disaster recovery, and more customers are now looking at, making sure that their highly critical applications are at least protected with, disaster recovery solutions.
So, that's an interesting segue. That brings to my next question. You were talking about when the cloud came, clients were thinking, I don't need DR anymore much to think about because they have the availability zones, right?
Right.
They have regions there, right? They can, keep their DR cross region, or there are at least the multiple availability zones. There, one zone goes down, they can immediately switch to the next one. So how do we think about that? You just mentioned that's not true for the clients, that they have to think very carefully when managing that in the cloud.
Right. It's all about, planning, right? So if a customer wants to move their production environment in cloud, right, they really need to think resiliency. And resiliency has two aspects. One is availability and recoverability. Availability is proactive and recoverability is reactive, right? Just because you are highly available, right, that doesn't mean, it's going to help you in recovery, right? Especially, if you have, uh, you know so you need to plan, you need to have a design in place as to how you are going to, schedule, configure your recovery, how you are going to test this in real time scenarios and all those things. So, we are seeing, originally, people were reluctant to spend. It's all about cost, right? uh, so I think more, and as you more educate your clients as to why they need to have protection, at least they need to be designed to protect their environment. I think we are seeing more and more clients, making sure that at least their, top tier, applications are protected with disaster recovery.
We talked about like way back 24 years, majority, I think, that's the time only on-prem systems used to be, right? And then cloud came in. It's a wish list for many clients to be 100% on the cloud. But majority of the organization whom I work with or I have seen, hybrid, right? Some in cloud, some on-prem, complex environment. If I think about a DR in on-prem, I can understand in a certain way to do it. Cloud, I understand it's a certain way to do it. But in this hybrid environment, I know how the DR positioning has changed.
So that becomes very important, right? Because the applications, if there are applications which are using both on-prem and um, in cloud, there are some applications which depend on on-prem applications, on vice versa. It becomes very important now that how do you have the disaster recovery program in such a way that these applications are always in the sync, right? Because then you have to synchronize all the all your disaster recovery, all your backup schedules, all your replication schedule. Make sure that all the connectivity is there, all the dependencies on your vendors, connectivity to your SaaS providers, other partners is all there. All those things must be taken into consideration, and it increases the complexity, right? uh, so it needs to be well thought disaster recovery. You need to understand your applications better, and then you need to implement a solution which will allow you to be uh, have the connectivity. So you are not unlikely to have both data centers go down at the same time. So you need to be prepared. I know if I were to recover one, how do I make sure that it is in sync with the other, and how do I have the connectivity, and all will be flawlessly, right? And that's why you have to test. You need to test as frequently as you can.
So Anand, when you design the hybrid kind of model in production, I have some applications running on cloud, some on-prem, some private cloud. If I have to design my DR systems, do you like kind of mirror that? Okay, whatever is in the cloud, let's plan them in the cloud. Whatever on-prem, plan them on-prem, or it is not necessary. It depends on the situation. You assess that and design it accordingly.
You have to look at from complexity perspective, right? It's so we have a lot of clients who are in multi cloud environment, their own private cloud, on-prem, other other hypervisor, hyperscalers which they are using. So from disaster recovery perspective, you got to have at least, the way you need to plan is, your application, how they talk to each other, right? The latency of the applications, you know the platforms which they make up of, the database recovery or dependencies, all those things must be taken into consideration in order to define a solution. Many customers who are, maybe one or two hyperscaler solution, you know um, especially, if you have platforms which are not cloud friendly, right? Those platforms also need to be into consideration, whether those applications should be recovered in a colo near the hyperscaler, so that you don't have any latency issues, especially the healthcare applications, EMR applications, right? They cannot be 100 miles or thousands of miles apart, right? Because there is a latency. The lives of customers are at stake if there is no connectivity, proper connectivity in case of a disaster recovery. So those things, all those things, the type of application, financial institutes, have different requirements, healthcare organizations have different requirements. So you need to have the industry perspective also as to what are the business needs, and those business needs go into making the preparation and design the recovery solution.
Got you. So Anand, I think we talked about the on-prem, we talked about cloud, we talked about hybrid, but one question always comes to my mind, right? In general, in terms of a DR, we do, or we means like as an organization, I have seen there are a lot of emphasis on the security, right? Security on the production environment, right? Everything possible in the world, security is being kind of implemented there. Everybody's looking very carefully with the lenses, what possibilities are there, how can we help protect it. Then comes the DR, right? I don't see that much of emphasis there on the DR side of it. So when you design the DR environment, how the security angle you think about it, and more important question which I had for you is the cost which you talked about, right? I probably CFO is okay to spend few $1 million security on the production system. If we need to replicate another few millions for the DR, does it work, right? How do you see that in the industry?
So one thing you cannot do is compromise security, right? In your DR environment, especially. Many of their clients do not consider that. They will they look at, I'm recovering applications, but many of the clients fail to um, make investment into recovering their monitoring applications for application monitoring, as well as their security tools. And many customers we have worked with, they don't realize that in case of disaster, those applications are going to secure your recovered environment and monitor it, right? So that is very important, right? And also things which are also critical is, and many customers fail to do that, when they do disaster recovery, you know all the logs and all the things they generate must be fed back into their security monitoring tools. Why? Because things could happen in your disaster recovery environment. If you have some of the solutions, you may that could potentially go back, right? So the access controls, the firewalls, and all other your uh, scanning tools, anomaly detection tools, and all those things must be in place when it comes to disaster recovery. You cannot compromise on cost for those tools, right?
So with your
Because
experience, Anand, what have you seen? Probably Kyndryl does a lot of disaster recovery management or business resiliency solutions for many of the clients. When it comes to the aspects of security, what's the percentage you've seen client is more willing to kind of invest on that side versus, percentage of the clients are say, okay, we'll see what when happens.
if you look at, so one of the things Kyndryl is focused on, right? And that has been our vision and mission, is to be the best in cyber resiliency. When I say cyber resiliency, it has two aspects to it. One is, cyber security, which is the identify, protect, detect functions of your NIST framework. And then it comes to response and recovery. Though there are elements of security in the response, it's more of a resiliency function, right? In order for you to be, cyber resilient, you really need to focus on security. When you start to look at, your cloud environments, multiple multi-cloud environments, going into SaaS products and all those things, you are increasing the surface area of attack, right? So you must make sure that, the security and the monitoring applications are enterprise wide. It cannot be, half cooked. It has to be completely vetted, and it needs to be you should make sure that every element of security is in place. And especially, you cannot just forget about recovering security applications and, you know your monitoring applications in your DR space. A lot of customers fail to do that,
Got,
and that's risky.
got you. So in general, Anand, I know you have the, lot of footprint of the clients where you manage their, disaster recovery solution. On an average, like how many incidents you have seen where you need to recover the real production system? I'm not talking about the test. I'm talking about somebody has declared.
I would say, you know it's not like prominent where you have 10 events a month. It's not like that, right? But there are events. They may not be data center level events, but there are customers who, I would say, we see 10-15 events a year, easily, from different, parts of, US.
Okay.
um, but they could be multiple, this thing. And some of the customers, they and because of certain customers actually have extended their DR for their cyber recovery also, right? So, in some cases last year we had some customers had suspicion of cyber incident in their environment, so they used their disaster recovery environment and, subscription to be used for, making sure that they can recover from a cyber event. So that has become also a critical, point to remember, right? You cannot Now you can extend your DR, for,
Yeah.
using the same infrastructure. You have investment already, right? If with some tweaks, you can easily extend that to,
The cyber.
for cyber.
Perfect. So it's not just the DR recovery. Now you are
No.
equipped to have a cyber recovery
You
as well.
need to make sure that, your investment is, with little bit of more money invested, you are trying to protect. We have a customer who recently had a cyber event. They wanted to use their DR, environment for recovering, but they realized that their DR data is compromised with the cyber event. And
Oh,
if they had implemented the cyber protection, they would have used the same environment to recover from cyber also. So
got you.
it's a very important thing every customer should consider and look into.
Got you. So Anand, do you help your clients like from the assessment phase to the day-to-day management operations, or which stage you kind of get engaged with the client?
So we work with our clients from end to end. We provide advisory services where we look at their resiliency posture when it comes to availability and recoverability. We provide them with, gap assessment, and provide them, how do you mitigate those, right? That helps them, transform their, resiliency posture, whether it's availability or disaster recovery. And now that we are also helping them with the cyber recovery, many times the customers, want us to implement those recommendations, so that, they have the one, they know that we have looked at their environment. So it helps us to continue working with us. So we do many cases, we do implementation, whether it's on-prem or in cloud, whether it's disaster recovery, or it is highly available solution in cloud or multiple data center. Also, we have capabilities to provide them managed services. So we have team of people who basically can provide monitoring 24 by 7, and in case of if there is a dynamic disaster recovery solution, help stand up the environment in case there is a test, or in case of a disaster, we create procedures and processes in order for the customer to recover the solution. If they want us to recover, we provide what we call as a recovery program execution and recovery program management services.
Got
So
you.
it's a full spectrum of services which we provide based on the customer needs.
Got you. Got you. Anand, every time I speak to you in past also, I get enriched. Like two things I'm taking back today in my mind is going to be sticking is minimum viable company, and resiliency is not just the recovery, it's a availability plus recovery. Well, thank you very much, Anand, for your time today. Anand, are you active on LinkedIn?
I'm active on LinkedIn.
In case, Anand, anybody wants to reach out to you, what should be the best way to reach out to you?
You can reach out to me via LinkedIn soon, in either a disaster recovery or cyber security related, cyber resiliency related conferences. So,
Perfect.
hit me up when you see me on those conferences.
Perfect. All right. Appreciate it, Anand. Thank you so very much. As always, as I said, I get enriched all the time I speak to you.
Thank you,
Appreciate your
Manish, for
time
this
today.
opportunity.